Good evening. I'm Elise Skolnick, president of the Youngstown Press Club. Thank you for being here tonight. It's wonderful to have so many people join us to help us honor the award winners. This evening wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. Thank you, Denise and John York and the DeBartolo Corporation, Stambaugh Auditorium, and Cavelli Enterprises. Their generous support enables us to host this evening and to celebrate the outstanding achievements of our honorees. And thank you to Stambaugh Auditorium for hosting us. Being in this beautiful building makes the evening even more special. Now I'd like to introduce the Press Club Board of Governors. Please stand when I call your name. Tony Paglia, Lori Factor, Andrea Sika-Heschmeyer, Joanne Kolarick, Jordan Cohen, Denise Dick, and Madison Tromler. And thank you to the person who makes all of our jobs much easier, our volunteer executive director, Diane Fitzpatrick. Tonight's event takes a dedicated group to put together. I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame and Awards Dinner Planning Committee, Paulina Montaldo, Ed Byers, Jordan Cohen, Lori Factor, Tim Fitzpatrick, Madison Tromler, and especially Joanne Kolarick. She does a tremendous job putting in many hours to make sure all goes as planned. I'd also like to thank the awards committee for their hard work. Chair Mark Niket, Ed Byers, Dan Pecchia, Dennis Mangan, and Andrea Wood. And because a big part of this night is about the Press Club scholarships and our scholarship recipients, I would also like to thank our scholarship committee. Tony Paglia, Emily Webster Love, Glenn Stevens, Jerry Jenkins, Lisa Abraham, and Jody Glass. And lastly, I would like to thank our members for supporting the Press Club. And a special thank you to our institutional members, the Business Journal, the Anderson Program in Journalism at YSU, Pecchia Communications, the Mahoning Valley Historical Society, and the Public Library of Youngstown and Mahoning County. Thank you. This was an amazing year for the Press Club. We grew our membership as well as our outreach. We launched an e-newsletter and joined the Chamber of Commerce. We completed our first year of the Scholastic Journalism Awards, a journalistic writing and media contest for high school students. We continued our successful speaker series with a variety of topics of importance to journalists, communicators, and the public. And we once again honored fallen journalists with the World Press Freedom Day reading of the names. And we co-hosted a Student Press Freedom Day event with students at the Jam Bar. And now I would like to introduce you to your MC for the evening, Lori Factor. Lori is immediate past president of the Youngstown Press Club. She is director of P12 and business partnerships and initiatives at Youngstown State University. A seasoned communications professional, Lori held key leadership roles at the YSU Alumni Association and in the Cliff College of Creative Arts, where she directed the YSU's Summer Festival of the Arts for 2 decades. A Youngstown State University graduate, Lori is proud that both of her adult children are also YSU alumni. Lori?
Well, thank you once again for joining us for the 5th Annual Youngstown Press Club Hall of Fame and Awards Dinner. You might be wondering why I'm serving as tonight's MC, and truth be told, I wondered that myself, because as of last night, I was not your MC. WFMJ news anchor Madison Tromler was originally scheduled to lead us, but due to an unexpected family matter, she could not be here. So I'm pinch hitting, and I hope I can do her justice. This evening marks a milestone. When the Press Club relaunched in 2018, few of us could have imagined welcoming 200 guests to celebrate journalism, media, and communications. Our honorees this year are truly exceptional, and we should be proud of the strength of our local media community, especially in a time when the press faces challenges in so many places. Tonight is about celebrating those being recognized, showing support for our profession, and reconnecting with colleagues and friends. Judging by the conversations I've overheard, we are really a lively and fun group, right? The order of events is outlined in your program, but to highlight, we'll be recognizing our scholarship recipients, then our award winners, and finally, our Hall of Fame inductees. So let's get started. When we ask our members what matters most, the answer is clear: scholarships to support the next generation of journalists and communicators. This is the third year of our scholarship program, and once again, we are inspired by the caliber of applicants. If these students are any indication, the future of journalism is bright. Thanks to the generosity of our scholarship donors, we were able to expand the program this year, from awarding two $2,000 scholarships to presenting 3 scholarships of $4,000 each. Let me say that again, 3 scholarships, $4,000 each. These funds go directly to the student to assist with their educational journey in whatever capacity they need at the time. In addition, under the direction of our board, a portion of proceeds from all press club events supports this scholarship fund, ensuring that we continue to invest in the future of our field. And now I'd like to introduce to you our 2025 scholarship winners. Carlisle Hanchard of Niles is a journalism major with a minor in sociology at Youngstown State University. Currently the entertainment editor of the Jambar, Carlisle has been a reporter and columnist for the paper. His journalism studies began in 2021 at the University of the West Indies in Mona, Jamaica. Carlisle hopes to work as a reporter for a few years before returning to school to pursue a master's degree or a law degree. Congratulations, Nick Carlisle, and we'd like to welcome you to the stage.
Oh, there you are.
Hello. Give me a second, I'm feeling my heartbeat in the soles of my feet right now. To the members of the Youngstown Press Club, the Jambar, all the news outlets that are present, family members, friends, good evening. My name is Carlisle Hanchard. I am a senior journalism major at the Youngstown State University. As mentioned, I am an editor at the Jambar, a columnist, and a reporter. I am also one of this evening's scholarship winners. I would like to briefly share a story from high school that I think is indicative of where I am at the moment. I did not see myself as anything outstanding in high school. My grades and the awards would say differently, but I didn't feel that way. This day in particular, I was walking past my grade coordinator and he said to me, "Hello, Dr. Hanchard." And I said, "Mr. Cole, I am not a doctor. I will not be a doctor because I'm not in the sciences." And he said to me, there's more than one way to become a doctor. And I stopped for a moment, thought about it, and then it hit me. I know as many educators in the room today will tell you that they are tasked with nurturing the students that are in their charge, but his statement to me at a time where I felt unworthy of opportunities, it hit home. He recognized a brilliance that I didn't see in myself, and I thank him for that. Sometimes, while at YSU, I also feel unworthy of the many opportunities that I have as an editor, as a reporter, As the secretary of a club, as the president of YSU Society for Collegiate Journalists, it's a lot, and I do sometimes feel unworthy. I also felt unworthy when applying for this scholarship, and I was on my way to work when I got the email, and I was beyond pleased. Saying that to say, I would like to thank everyone at the Youngstown Press Club for seeing a potential in me that I don't often see in myself. I thank you. I thank everyone who's here, who's donated, who intends to donate. Please continue doing so. There are many students like myself who just want someone or a group of someones to see their potential and to nurture that and to own that. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe.
Our second scholarship winner is Aisha Sawana. Aisha is a communication studies major at YSU with a concentration in digital communication and public relations. Originally from Sierra Leone, West Africa, Aisha is passionate about storytelling that builds community and amplifies underrepresented voices. At YSU, she serves as a student orientation ambassador and works in the Office of Marketing and Communications, where she helps manage student-focused digital campaigns and produces social media content. She has also been actively involved in student media and storytelling efforts that highlight the diverse experiences of her campus community. Congratulations, Aisha.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Aisha Sawane, and first and foremost, I would like to thank Allah for guiding me to this moment. I would like to also thank my parents, my mom, who's here today, and my dad, who's back home, for their endless love and sacrifices. I love you guys so much. I want to thank my siblings, especially Aisha and Imran, and my wonderful cousin, Khadija, for always cheering me on. You guys are my rock. Lastly, I would like to thank the Youngstown Press Club for this amazing opportunity. I am truly honored to receive the scholarship from the Youngstown Press Club. As an international student from Sierra Leone, this award means so much to me, as it does not only help me continue my education, but also reminds me of all the hard work I've been doing, and that the path that I'm pursuing that shows that really matters. I would also like to give a special thank you to Hannah Worley for seeing a potential in me when I did not. I'd like to thank Alisa for hiring me and for giving me the opportunity to meet everyone in the Office of Marketing and Communication. I would also like to thank Miss Becky and Allison, who have always been there guiding me whenever I have questions, which is all the time, helping my AP writing and communication skills. I would also like to thank Garrett for always reviewing my work. You guys are really amazing, and I'm so lucky to work with amazing people like you. I am so grateful. I want to thank my professors and the entire Department of Communication at YSU for always believing in me and supporting me. Because when I first came to America, I didn't start doing communications because I didn't know what communication was. But I took my communication foundation class, and my professor Doran, who's actually here today, was amazing and showed me what it's like to be a professor. Even though I don't think I want to be a professor, but it showed me what it means to be a communication professor, what it means to express yourself. So thank you, Doran. And finally, I would like to thank the Youngstown Press Club for this amazing opportunity and for allowing me to use my voice to uplift others, and for believing in students like me and the future of communication and journalism. Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
We're seeing a thread here, potential, right? Can we see the potential of these students? So our third scholarship winner is Emily Wiley. Emily is pursuing 2 degrees at YSU in marketing and sports journalism. She works for YSU in 3 capacities: in marketing and promotions for YSU athletics, on-court PA announcing at basketball games, and is a social media intern with the university. She's passionate about writing, communication, business, sports, and connecting with people. A Camel resident, Emily is a member of Lambda Pi Eta, the Communication Honor Society. Congratulations, Emily.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I want to begin by thanking the people who have always been in my corner, my family sitting right here, my coworkers who are always supporting me, my professors, and my friends. Now, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I know we all want to get out of here, but I just want to begin by thanking the Press Club for this incredible honor. As someone who is passionate about marketing and journalism, this really means a lot to me. As we all know, these fields are still dominated by men, which means standing up here today is even more meaningful and exciting for me. I just want to say that women don't just belong in these spaces, but we thrive in them. We succeed, we lead, and we make the sports field a better place. I hope to serve as living proof that breaking through in these fields is very much possible, and I hope to inspire the next generation of women who want to tell stories, cover games, or lead large campaigns. So once again, thank you Youngstown Press Club for not just supporting me, but for supporting the women in the future of sports. Thank you.
All right, one more round of applause. Why not, huh? Come on. Next, the Youngstown Press Club launched the Scholastic Journalism Awards this past year. The program supports high school journalists and journalism students in the Mahoning and Shenango Valleys and recognizes excellence in writing, reporting, and producing news for high school student newspapers, broadcasts, and online publications. Last year, we gave awards to students from Boardman, Struthers, Cardinal Mooney, Ursuline, Salem, Badger, and Schroffen Career Center for their outstanding work on their school publications and broadcasts. We would like to recognize Lillian Andrews from Boardman High School, who was named the Scholastic Journalist of the Year. Lillian is now a journalism major at Denison University. Although she's unable to be with us tonight, let's honor her with a round of applause. Thank you, thank you. And now I'd like Tim Fitzpatrick, Press Club member, to join me on stage where he will spend a minute talking to you about the next scholarships and the future of our scholarship program. Tim?
Thank you, Lori. Welcome, everyone, and congratulations to our scholarship winners. They're making my job quite a bit easier. My job tonight is the call for the cause of the Youngstown Press Club Annual Scholarship Fund Drive. On your tables, you're going to find envelopes for this specific purpose. They look like this. You can donate cash. You can write a check. You can write a pledge amount on that envelope and then use your credit card over at the donor table before you leave tonight. Or, I figured this out just earlier tonight, you can get on your phone, go to the Youngstown Press Club website, and donate right there using your debit card or credit card. If you have not already contributed to this year's drive, and I know that many of you have, I hope that you will consider making an investment in the future of journalism. Every contribution of any amount matters. We're going to have some folks roaming around the room here to bring me these envelopes so that we can acknowledge your contribution right here and right now. We hope to get a quick tally and read the names of those who are joining us in supporting this scholarship program. You can get their attention by simply raising your hand. I see one back there already, and they'll bring me those envelopes. While you're doing that, I have just a couple of observations that I'd like to share. When I was a journalism student at YSU, I was the recipient of scholarships. When my wife Diane was a journalism student at Kent State, she was the recipient of scholarships. And when our son Jack was a journalism student at the Cronkite School at ASU, he too was the recipient of scholarships. As such, we can personally attest to the impact of scholarships. Now, the financial aspect of it, it's helpful. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But there's something much more important, and that's the message that is being sent to these scholarship recipients. That message is this: you can do this. We have confidence in you. We believe in you. We believe in you. That's the message that you're sending to our scholarship award winners with your contributions. 3 years ago, and this was mentioned earlier, we surveyed our members about what the major focus should be for the Youngstown Press Club, and we got many different suggestions. I know, because I was the executive director at the time. But here was the shocker. Out of a very diverse group, 100% of the people who were responding said we should launch a scholarship program. 100%. Now, I'm not a particularly religious person, but if you can get unanimous agreement from a group of journalists and corporate communicators and public relations people and educators, that's nothing short of a miracle. So we took it as a sign and got busy, and in 3 short years, the Youngstown Press Club has awarded $20,000 in scholarships to 7 students from Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. You made that happen. Here's an important point. All of that money went to those students. The Youngstown Press Club has no administrative expenses, with the exception of some nominal fees that we get charged for processing credit card donations, and some of our donors very graciously choose to cover those costs. In the first couple of years of this program, we had Dr. Adam Earnhardt from YSU get up at this very dinner to do the call for the cause, the proverbial passing of the hat. And people gave generously, because Adam is a very big guy, and people were terrified. Told you I was going to call you out, Adam. This year I was asked to do this. I'm not a big guy, so I needed a different strategy. My strategy was to send out a bunch of requests by email and on social media ahead of time, and I have to tell you that I was very humbled by the generosity of so many people who joined Diane and me to tell our scholarship winners, we believe in you. I want to take a quick moment to publicly acknowledge those people who have contributed so far. The Breckenridges, Mary Beth and Tom, Andrea Wood and Dennis LaRue, Stan Boney, Dan Pecchia Communications, Tony Paglia, Mona Alexander, Pete Milliken, Glenn Stevens, Dennis Mangan, lost my spot, the Denny's, Arlene and George, Ernie Brown, Deb Flora, the Skolnicks, Elise and David, Lisa Abraham, Tom Williams, Jeff Shaban, Emily Webster Love, Mary Ellen Crowley Huskin, the Nicketts, Mark and Lisa, Ed Romero and Cheryl Waite, Lisa Sully, Stacy Canones, Denise Dick, Jack Gerdick, Chris Travers, Alan and Debbie Ponzio. Thank you so much for your generosity. You truly are making a difference. Let's give them a round of applause. There's another group of donors to whom I owe a personal debt of gratitude. These are people who've never been to Youngstown, Ohio, but they had the misfortune to either work with me or to be my neighbor. And then they compounded that error by staying connected with me on social media, and all of them gave very generously. Keith Stevens, Ijaz Mahboub, Charlie Baker and Raul Escudero, Lindsay Paulo, Jaime Rasai, Darlene DeRosa, and Vance Powers. Again, none of them have been to Youngstown, Ohio, but they signed up to support our cause. I should mention that all of our donors will be listed on the website donor thank you page, including those who contribute tonight. Speaking of which, do we have any envelopes that we can add to our total tally for the evening? Yes? I can stand here as long as it takes. But you knew that. Nothing? Okay. They're gathering. It'll just take a moment. If you feel like you need to go to the bar to get a drink, go ahead. Get two. I want you relaxed. We're doing just a little tally off to the side here so that we can give you a total for the evening. I'm going to give you while they're totaling up what has come in this evening, I will tell you that walking in the door, we had, prior to tonight, just under $12,000. Jonathan, the envelopes, please. Wow. Holy moly. I have got to say this. We just raised. We'll add these in after the fact. We're going to communicate this after the fact. But we have just raised in excess of another in excess of $34.80 to add to our total, which means we have fully funded next year's scholarships through our efforts tonight. I'm going to do this very quickly. Trevor Parks, the doctors Adam and Mary Beth Earnhardt, Joanne Kalarik and Bart Gilmore, Anonymous, thank you Anonymous, Jessica, I'm not sure about this name, Logue, Demetra, Joyce Wheeler, Kim Calhoun, in memory of John Nagy, John Fainert, Beth Prezant, I apologize if I'm messing up any of these names, Tony and Kimberly Paglia, Pauline Nagy, Rick Logan, Cheryl Mangan, Jennifer Barnaby, Marty Burke, Julianne Bittersdecke, I apologize if I got that wrong, my mistake, unsigned, anonymous, Andrea Wood and Dennis LaRue, Barb Ronan, May Mitchell, Dorothy Wedgewoe, I knew this part was going to be the hardest part of the evening for me, James and Anita Canty, Denise York, Dorothy Wedgeworth, your math, Kathy Gronkowski, Stacy McCowan, Kara Paglia, and Joanne Gee. I probably got that wrong. I apologize. Thank you for your patience with my terrible reading of the names, but thank you even more for what you're doing to support the future of journalism. Thanks, everyone.
Good evening. I'm Diane Laney Fitzpatrick. I'm Executive Director of the Youngstown Press Club, and I am here to present the Medal of Merit to Pete Milliken. The Medal of Merit is awarded to a Press Club member who has made outstanding contributions to the club. And Pete, as our media relations person, writer of press releases, and fountain of information on media outlets, their deadlines, how their newsrooms are run, who makes the decisions, and how we can reach those people, Pete is the perfect recipient for this award. Pete is the reason we have gotten such wonderful coverage from our media partners in the last few years. And a few examples of that are on the board in the back. If you haven't had a chance to see them, make sure you check that out when you leave. In the 1980s, I had the distinct pleasure of working with Pete at The Vindicator. And when we moved to the new building, My cubicle was just across and down from Pete's. There were so many people that I worked with at the Vindicator that I looked up to and tried to emulate, but Pete was by far the most conscientious, detail-oriented, hardworking, focused, driven, perfectionist that a newsroom ever saw. Now in his retirement, he has graciously given his time and talents to the press club, and we all know how fortunate we are to have that. You'll see Pete's stamp on almost everything that we do. I have slipped into the habit of using Pete's news releases for website content, emails, and all other communications, not just because it's easier for me, but because it can't be done any better than the way that he does it. Every time Pete sends me a news release, he'll say, "Now, please check this over for any mistakes or misspellings." There are never any mistakes, and there are never any misspellings. And that is really just remarkable and very rare. He is concise, to the point, and in his words, has a terse writing style, just like a good newsman. The one thing I appreciate most about him is that every month or so, Pete and I will have a long discussion about communication strategy, which for a small club like ours, with all volunteers, this has really elevated us, and I think it's the reason that we have the digital footprint that we have and the exposure that we have locally. So on behalf of the entire press club, I would like to thank Pete Milliken for bringing his experience and expertise to our club and to present him with the Medal of Merit.
Thank you, Diane, for that introduction. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to use my training and experience to help the Youngstown Press Club promote local journalism and recognize those who have achieved excellence in our profession. All of our members deserve credit for the club's success by honoring our award and scholarship recipients, by planning, attending, and supporting our events, and by donating to our college scholarship fund. Tonight, we are inducting 5 giants of Mahoning Valley journalism into our Hall of Fame. One of the Hall of Fame inductees is the late Paul Jagnow, who coached me on how to write accurately, clearly, and concisely. He said, "Keep it tight, don't waste words." In keeping with his philosophy and consistent with my training, I'll conclude now without wasting words and say to you, I sincerely thank you for acknowledging my contributions to the Press Club with this award. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Joanne Kalarick. Most of the people are being honored tonight for their incredible professional careers and accomplishments, but I nominated Sydney Canty for her work on one particular piece. While Sydney has embarked on a great journalism career, this particular work, the WFMJ 101 West half-hour special, Invisible Chains, exploring human trafficking in the Valley. This one jolted me, and the whole Valley. There were others involved in the making of this award-winning show, but Sydney found trafficked victims and with an empathetic interview style, made them feel comfortable enough to spill out their horrible stories. She made us see that trafficking isn't in that dark side of town where we don't go. It's right in the middle of our upscale, pointy-roofed communities. Unknowing young women being groomed with help when they need it most, utility bills being paid, diapers for the babies, a nice place to stay, until one day the door locks and their freedom is locked and they become literal slaves. Mostly women being sold 10 to 20 times a day, making so much more income for their pimp than a single drug deal would have made. They prey on their drug addictions, and they give them just enough to keep them lingering on for the next fix. We know our valley's vulnerable because of the interstate highway system, having access from all sides of the nation, but it's also because of our high opioid addiction rates. If you haven't watched the episode, I encourage you to go to WFMJ.com and search for it and make yourself aware of the horror that's happening in our valley. Sydney Canty for the Youngstown Press Club Excellence in Media Award.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you for, nominating me and really more so for looking at that piece. And I'm glad that it did exactly what we wanted it to do. We wanted it to impact our community, and it did. I'm grateful to be up here. I have a lot of people to thank for where I am in my career today. It's mind-boggling to me to think of how far I've come in half a decade, and it was not by any means all on my own. So I am going to get to the thank yous, but I want it to flow naturally, so I'm gonna start from the beginning. 5 years ago, I was looking for a way to break into the field of journalism, and I didn't know how to do that. So I went and I found myself a mentor who could help me with that. Her name was Carolyn Clifford, and she's the main anchor at WXYZ in my hometown, Detroit, Michigan, and she taught me to go into my community and to find stories to report on. Now, at this point in time, I didn't have a camera, I didn't have any equipment, editing software. All I had was a little iPhone and a microphone that could clip to it, but she told me to use what I had, and I did. So I could only find feature stories at first. But then one day there was a George Floyd protest in downtown Detroit, and I knew it was going to be a big deal. But what I didn't know was that my governor, Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, would be there actively protesting, and I knew that I needed to interview her. Problem was, I was a young journalist who, before that moment, had never in my life even done a hard news story, and on top of that, I was not affiliated with any kind of a news organization whatsoever. So I, in my head, I'm like, she's gonna look at me in this little iPhone and shoo me away, Or I was like, but Sydney, maybe she could also give you a shot. So there was this moment that I called a God-sent moment where a literal path from me to her opened up during this protest. I mean, people had dispersed from around her, and I said to myself, I was like, Sydney, it is now or never. It's not gonna happen if you don't do it right now. I ran up to her, and I asked if I could interview her. She said yes, much to my surprise. I put that moment together, that video together, and that story together, and I sent it to my first news director, Mona Marie Alexander. Now, this would be the beginning of my career, which I didn't know. So I have to stop here and I have to acknowledge my God, Jesus Christ, for giving me the courage to do this job, the gifts to do it, and for leading me every step of the way. This story helped me to become a reporter at WFMJ underneath Mona's tutelage, as well as my current news director, Sheila Miller, my assistant news director, Justin Mitchell, and my digital content manager, Robin McFerrin. And together, they taught me everything that I know. They taught me everything that I know. Mona taught me to be tough, to stand firm, to follow my reporter intuition, is what she would call it. I love her. Sheila teaches me to think outside of the box, She does. She teaches me to not get bogged down with what's going on around me. She encourages me so much. And kind of like how like a child watches and learns from their mother as they grow and get older, I'm learning that as I sit with her and I watch her lead our newsroom, I'm learning how to just be a leader under her tutelage as well. Justin, he had to physically hold my hand and teach me about politics, about everything, basically, literally, property taxes and court cases, so many things. And he would tell me when I'm wrong, and on top of that, he wouldn't just leave me to figure it out on my own. He helps me to make it right. He's very reliable, there when I need, answers, there when I need help. There's just so many people at my station that are there for me, and it's a place where journalists can grow and learn. Our digital content manager, Robert McFerrin, has always been around to lend a helping hand, so gentle, so kind. Jack Gerdick, my general manager, has been nothing but understanding, very down to earth, easy to talk to. And it's nice to have someone at the helm like that. This news station, it's been more than a blessing to my career, but also to me as a person. My mother, Anita Canty, prays over me and has always been my biggest cheerleader. Is the reason I went into journalism in the first place. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got to college, and she was like, well, you speak well, you write well, you talk a lot. Who do you think I get that from? So she told me to go into journalism, and I did. And she knew what she was talking about. My father, James Canty, he kept me on the right path growing up. I used to get in some trouble. He really kept me on the right path. And, he always said to me, wherever they put you, shine. Whether that's cleaning toilets, whether that's at the anchor desk, wherever they put you, shine, and work hard is what he taught me. He taught me a good work ethic. My grandmother, Dorothy Wedgeworth, always a listening ear, a good laugh, and might watch more WFMJ newscasts than anyone I know, seriously, in Detroit. She streams all of them. So what am I saying? These people, all of them that I have named, are the ones who have molded me. It was 5 years ago this month, I began my career at WFMJ. And in that time, I've grown. I've also fallen, gotten back up, developed some impactful stories from exclusives to investigations, even won an Emmy for that human trafficking piece that Joanne was telling you all about. It really just all feels like a full circle moment to be here today. So I say all this to say, this was not a single person's accomplishment. This was the work, the prayer, the faith, the mentoring, the patience, the love of a lot of people. And I'm just really so grateful. I'm so grateful to God. I'm so grateful to every single one of you for my success. Thank you. I honor you. You guys made me a well-rounded journalist and person. And I'm just really, really, really grateful. I also want to thank the Press Club for this award, for acknowledging me and recognizing me in this way. And I'll leave you all with this. In the words of one of my favorite mentors, Mrs. Mona Marie Alexander, quote, "The role of journalists moving forward is to continue to report the truth and report it not through any type of bias, any type of prism, anything other than just the plain critical truth is the biggest role we will have to play." And it's the role I'm going to play. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jody Glass, and I am honored to be here tonight to present the Excellence in Media Award to Margie Lenhart. I first met Margie when I was a 22-year-old YSU student working as a news intern at the radio center on Simon Road for Don Ferguson and Pat Mulrooney. Back then, radio still had live news breaks on both the AM and FM stations. My job was to go in early, write and read the news on our AM stations, and also prepare the stories and carts, if any of you remember carts, for Margie and others to use on their broadcasts. It was a strange time for radio. We were bought, sold, and moved around a lot. And together, Margie and I worked on Simon Road, on Knox Street, and later at Clear Channel in what was known as the Palace on South Avenue. Through all those changes, Margie remained a constant, and she made a lasting impact on me, both personally and professionally. There are many things Margie did and said that helped shape me into the public relations professional I am today, but one lesson stands out above the rest. Back on Knox Street, when I was still very new and freshly graduated from YSU, I had a habit of sitting up front with the secretary just chatting. Where I sat was just feet from the boss's office. Being young and naive, I really didn't see anything wrong with that. But Margie pulled me aside. She decided to invest in me and share some wisdom. She said something I will never forget. She explained that as a young woman trying to make my way in this industry, I should be mindful of how I carried myself in the workplace. And her words were, walk with purpose, don't be the person that's not working. Those words encouraged me to reevaluate my work ethic and show up every day and do the best job that I could. That advice has stuck with me throughout so many phases of my career, and I shared it time and again with other young female professionals, hoping they would understand the value of those words. I love sharing this wisdom and knowing that it has trickled down to so many women throughout the years because it's good advice, it's solid advice, and it's actually generous advice. It's the kind of advice that leaves a legacy. Margie is not only an excellent broadcaster and an incredible voice-over artist, she is also a mentor, a role model, and a true professional. It is my absolute pleasure to honor my friend, Margie Lenhart, tonight and present her with the Excellence in Media Award.
Thank you so much, Jody, my dear, dear friend. The whole time I was mentoring you, Jody, I didn't even realize I was doing it. But seeing what an amazing person you are, so dedicated to your job, an extraordinary mother, if I played even a very small part in that, I am very honored. Speaking of mentors, I was mentored by one of the very best, and he had no idea he was doing it. You will hear later on in this program about John Nagy. I'm sure you know him, most of you know him, or you know of him. But as I was coming up in radio news reporting, I always looked to John Nagy to see how it was supposed to be done. His unshaken professionalism was the best journalism class I ever took. I'm also very honored to be here with this inspiring group of people. Currently, I am not a journalist. I host the morning show on Willie 95.1 Radio alongside my husband, John Thomas, who, by the way, named that building the Palace, Jody, just so you know. He gave it that name. However, I was a journalist twice during my radio career. And in case you didn't already know this, proper journalism is hard. I've had township supervisors turn off my tape recorder during a meeting. I had a defense attorney scream in my face for asking a question. I've sat through trials where specifics of a crime were described in gruesome detail. You all know this. You've faced it through your entire career. So I'll remind you of something that you already know. Respected, hard-working journalists like you are needed now more than ever. No matter which side of the political spectrum you stand on, never give up on the standards you were taught in Journalism 101. Report the truth. As we have seen with the rise of podcasts and social media, truth is often overlooked in order to express an opinion regardless of the actual facts. I have seen the bashing so many of you reporters take on social media because you wrote or produced a news story that simply contained the truth. Do not give up. Without you, corruption and abuse of power on all sides will grow unchecked. On a lighter note, honey, we're going to have to figure out where we're going to put this in the house. Fortunately, we don't have to hang anything on a wall, because if we did, I would bash a hole in the wall. And thank you so much to the Youngstown Press Club for this award. You are an amazing organization. I've learned so much about all of you tonight. Stay strong and keep doing what you're doing. This town and the world need you. Thank you very much.
Good
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marty Burke, and I am here to present the Excellence in Media Award to Chelsea Simeon. And I hope I don't mess this up because Chelsea is my boss, and her parents are here, and so are 3 other people that are in charge of me. So now I began working with Chelsea at WKBN in May of last year, and now she and I work mostly opposite schedules. Chelsea is dayside and I'm nightside, so I don't actually get to spend a lot of time working alongside Chelsea, but I do spend a lot of nights working alone, so I bother her after she goes home for the day more than anyone else. And although I might not have decades of memories working with Chelsea, I can say that she is a kind and helpful person. She's an amazing leader, and she represents and inspires excellence in media. Chelsea not only oversees and creates content for our website every day with enthusiasm and care, but her curiosity and passion for investigative journalism drive her to dig deeper, something that began early in her career. At the Chronicle-Telegram in Lorain County, Chelsea's reporting on a child neglect case not only earned her awards from the Ohio Associated Press and the Ohio Society of Professional Journalists, it also led to actual procedural changes at the county's Children's Services Agency. And when she joined WKBN 10 years ago, Chelsea only continued that standard. In 2021, she and co-writer Jordan Unger wrote an in-depth digital story that covered how local communities used federal COVID-19 relief funds, which was recognized by the Ohio Associated Press Media Editors with a first-place award for Best Digital Project. And just last year, she published an investigative series of stories on a local landlord's exploitation of dozens of tenants, which I actually got to have a small glimpse into the creation of. If you go to WKBN.com, you can find the first story in the series titled Mold, Cockroaches, Leaky Roofs. Tenants say new owner of 300 Youngstown properties raised rent, ignored repair requests. Chelsea not only spoke to many of those tenants, she entered those homes and got a first-hand picture of what they were dealing with. It was during my first week of work that she was scheduled to go out for some of those interviews. So as part of my training, or maybe for Chelsea in this case, babysitting, I tagged along for 2 of those interviews. There, I got to see firsthand the compassion and care that Chelsea showed to those individuals as they talked about the issues in their homes, their financial and emotional struggles, and how they were ignored by the people who were supposed to help them. For many of these tenants, telling their stories to Chelsea was a last-ditch cry for help. And with nowhere else to turn, they put their trust in their local media, and Chelsea didn't let them down. While a solution for these tenants remains to be seen, Chelsea's reporting brought awareness to the public and city officials, put pressure on the landlord to respond and help its tenants, and fairly represented concerns of an underserved community. Chelsea is not only an instrumental part of the WKBN newsroom and web team, she embodies excellence in media. She sheds light where there is corruption and injustice, and she seeks the truth and reports it. I am proud to have worked under Chelsea for the past year and 4 months, and I'm proud to present her the Excellence in Media Award.
Thank you to Marty for the nomination. That's going to be a hard speech to follow. It really meant a lot coming from someone I've worked closely with, and I see great things in your future for journalism. First, I would like to thank the Press Club for this great honor. I have had the privilege of working alongside many of the members of the Press Club and past honorees, and it's one of the highest compliments to be recognized by this group. As my husband can probably attest, journalism is one of the great loves of my life. I have spent many long hours in newsrooms at home, sometimes working odd hours to interview a source or attend a meeting to gain more understanding of an issue affecting people in the community. For that, I have to thank my husband, who has been supportive of a career that has not been easy at times. He's been there to get our kids to sports practices, make sure dinner is on the table, and I know that's not an easy task, so for that I thank you. I always knew I would get into, I think I always knew I would get into this line of work because it was a focal point early on in my life. My father was an avid news reader and watcher, He always had a newspaper in hand in the afternoons, and the evening news was always on TV at dinner time. I remember watching some of the past honorees on the evening news growing up, so it was truly an honor to be able to share the newsroom with them later and get to work alongside them, gaining their wisdom that they've had in their years in business. My mother, though not as big of a news consumer, was a big reader. Growing up, she would read to my sister and I often, and our trips to the library were a magical time for me as a child. Each book exposed us to a new world or taught me something new. She encouraged my love of reading and writing. Before I could even write, I would write stories. She would listen to me tell them and write them in little books, which I would illustrate. I'm happy to report that my writing has improved a lot since then. In elementary school or middle school, I remember my first foray into the news field. My friend and I made a magazine, which I can only assume was based off the tabloids we saw at the grocery store. We called it Strange and Untrue Magazine, and we wrote about aliens and other nonsense. Tried selling subscriptions on the bus to kids for 25 cents. It certainly wasn't lucrative, but I don't think many of us get into it for the money anyway. But anyway, I have to thank my parents for showing me the importance of learning something new every day and keeping informed. You will never know how much this shaped me and inspired me. Another source of my inspiration was working at the Jam Bar at Youngstown State University. At the time, I didn't know I wanted to be in journalism, but I knew I liked writing, and the degree only required one math class, so I figured sign me up. I totally bombed my first job interview, but Mary Beth Earnhardt gave me a chance as a sports reporter. I knew absolutely nothing about sports, but I figured it was a foot in the door, and I made it my own. It was probably the first time that the Harry Potter Club's Quidditch team made it into the sports pages. But I figured it was interesting to me, so somebody else was bound to like it as well. Sports wasn't my cup of tea, but the job was. I got to meet new people every day, hear their fascinating stories, and I was learning something new. It was chaotic and hectic, throwing together paper on weeknights with my coworkers, who quickly became like a crazy, lovable, dysfunctional family. And I went on to work as arts and entertainment editor and assistant online editor, learning all the tools of the trade. Mary Beth was one of our biggest cheerleaders and was a great source of knowledge and ideas for us. I truly learned working more at the Jam Bar than any of my classes, and I always encourage new journalists to get that kind of on-the-job training. It's so important. After graduation, in months of searching for a job, a small paper in Elyria, Ohio, near Cleveland, gave me a chance. I loved the job and my coworkers and boss. I got to cover visits by several political candidates at the time, including Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. I even interviewed adult film star Ron Jeremy, which was quite a challenge to get an appropriate article into the newspaper from that interview. But I made it work. This little paper had a knack for investigative and enterprise reporting, something that I have seen sadly going by the wayside at many publications across the US. And I believe this is what keeps it going even today, when news consumers are increasingly moving to more non-traditional news sources. This has been a challenge for me as someone growing up, seeing the importance of investigative long-form journalists and moving into the 24/7 digital news circuit. I have seen consumers move from traditional print and television news to getting their news online, if at all, and solely through social media channels like TikTok and YouTube. This is our next challenge as journalists. How do we move to this fast-paced field and continue producing quality news content with less time and fewer resources? How do we keep people's attention on what is going on when most people can no longer focus on something for more than 2 minutes? How do we compete with artificial intelligence that can write a news article with just a chunk of notes? And how do we get through the online chatter labeling us fake news? But I have seen a need for this investigative reporting, and I see there's still appetite for it today. I can see people are reading on real time on our website, and yes, they want to know about the Chick-fil-A restaurant that is coming to town, but they also are looking for someone to take a deep dive into issues affecting them, and they will read it. And I am lucky my bosses at WKBN, Jason and John, who are here today, they see the importance of this as well and have allowed me to take time to develop these stories. And my coworkers, Marty and Michael and all the others, they are doing some great work and are passionate about these kind of enterprise reporting, and I enjoy helping them shape these stories. Recently, I've developed an interest in what is happening with the local housing sector, and what I've found is there are a few options for people who are living below the poverty line Prices are up, options are limited, and people are living in very substandard rental units. I've listened to people crying because they have nowhere else to go and no one to help them get out of their situations. When we play into the clickbait and political rhetoric, we are missing the opportunity to tell stories of real people in the area who have real struggles, or stories of hope and perseverance. Let's think to ourselves how we can keep people informed and keep people reading and focus on the issues that really matter. Now, more than ever, people need a watchdog. There are people in the highest positions working to silence us because they don't like the message, they don't want people to see the truth. Let's stand together and remember what got us into this work and why it is so important. I know some of us have faced difficult times lately, but I'm encouraged by those I work alongside daily who work hard every day with little praise because they know how important this job is. Thank you.
Well, now we're on to the part of introducing our 2025 class of Hall of Fame inductees. And I have the honor of introducing the first one. We all have people who come into our lives for one reason or another. I've been fortunate in my career to cross paths with many, some for a short time, others for the long haul. And among those who rise to the top, Marie Izzo Cartwright is one of the very best. I first met Marie back in the 1980s through the Western Reserve PR Society. As a young professional, I saw her as the gold standard. She gave advice without judgment, shared her experience generously, and in the process became my friend. Over the years, we worked on many projects together, and I came to admire not only her professionalism, but her kindness and wisdom. When this year's Hall of Fame nominations opened, I immediately thought of Marie. Her biography is in your program, but it's worth noting her legacy goes far beyond titles or positions. Whether at the Edward J. DeBartolo Corporation, serving as a Canfield Township trustee, or mentoring colleagues, Marie has always been all in. She empowers others to succeed, sets high standards, and does it all with integrity and generosity of spirit. On a personal note, when I found myself between jobs last year, Marie was the first person I called. She offered empathy, some tough love, her contacts, and her advice. Everyone needs a Marie Cartwright in their lives, and I know I'm not the only one who keeps her on speed dial. Marie showed so many of us, especially young women, in an industry where we weren't always welcomed, that we could thrive and build meaningful careers. She demanded excellence, led by example, and proved that hard work and thoroughness always matter. She always gave me a great piece of advice I've carried through my own career in event planning. She might not remember this, but I do. Always walk the property. An event can't be done from your desk. Walk the space. That's classic Marie, practical, wise, and right. I know I speak for many of us here when I say how fortunate we are to have her in our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Hall of Fame award winner, my dear friend and colleague, Marie Izzo Cartwright.
Will you put this back there with you? First, I'd like to thank Lori for that introduction. And she is a wonderful friend and a good professional as well. I'm sorry, let me just adjust that a little. I am truly honored and humbled to receive this recognition, especially considering the distinguished professionals who are being honored alongside me and those who have been recognized in the past. Throughout my life, I have come to understand that success is rarely achieved alone. It is often the result of guidance, mentorship, and support from others. My journey into journalism began quite unexpectedly, sparked by a simple complaint to my father about boredom.
Having recently moved from San Francisco, where I enjoyed sun, beaches, the ocean, and mountains, to Canfield, Ohio, I found myself with little to do. My parents had just built a new home, and my sister and I finally had our own bedrooms. But the transition wasn't easy. My father, a master diver and a chief gunner, had just retired from the Navy after 20 years of service. So when I started to complain, he responded by telling me, "Go into the other room, get a book off the shelf, and read it." In our house, the answer was, "Yes, sir." I selected a book on mythology, which I found fascinating, and discovered my love for reading. I must admit I was not a good student initially, preferring other activities over homework. However, subjects like English, history, and science captured my interest, and when journalism was introduced in high school, I was eager to participate. Mr. Worthington Baker made the subject engaging and enjoyable. In 1970, my junior year of high school, I entered a local writing contest sponsored by a news station, which offered the winner a week of study at Kent State University School of Journalism. To my surprise, I won. This was shortly after the May 4th incident at Kent State. During that week, I had the opportunity to meet James Michener, who was doing research for his book, Kent State, What Happened and Why. He explained his work and interviewed professors and students who were involved in the events. This provided me a profound understanding of journalism's role in documenting history. That experience solidified my desire to pursue a career in journalism after graduation, recognizing the importance of mentorship. My father introduced me to Nancy Childress, owner of Childress Public Relations, during my senior year of college. You may recognize the name Childress, whether it's Fred or Nancy. They were both writers with the Youngstown Vindicator. Fred was a longtime editorial writer and theater critic. Anyhow, Nancy offered me an internship which proved pivotal in my career. At the time, I had other offers, but my advisor recommended the PR firm, believing it would provide valuable agency experience. Nancy, who had worked for the Vindicator as a reporter, was known for her investigative work. Not only helped me develop my skills, but also taught me how to navigate a male-dominated industry. She introduced me to inspiring women like Ann Preslomsky and emphasized the importance of giving back to the community through service and professional involvement. During my tenure at the agency, I expanded the client list and diversified the portfolio. When I decided to move on, Nancy supported my decision and graciously allowed me to leave without a non-compete clause. Several clients offered me an in-house position. I accepted a role with a large wholesale retail company across 8 states. There I learned about customer service, regional marketing, and building business relationships, skills that proved invaluable in my subsequent endeavors. My career path eventually led me to a position with a major developer, which I often refer to as my best job. The role allowed me to work across various facets of the company, including accounting, architecture, design, construction, engineering, land development, leasing, and operations for community centers, regional malls, hotels, office towers, and sports facilities. No 2 days were alike, and the work was both challenging and rewarding. I was fortunate to learn from many mentors, including a memorable encounter with Mr. DeBartolo Sr. He challenged me on a marketing plan for a project in Palm Springs, California. At the end of our very brief discussion, he said to me, "You do what you think is best, but there are consequences." The plan was good, but the lesson I learned was to have the courage of my convictions, and this remains a guiding principle in my life. Throughout my career, I have maintained regular communications with the media, often navigating the delicate balance between confidentiality and transparency. I learned that sometimes the best response is a respectful no comment. A lesson I've discussed with colleagues years later, because as everybody knows, a no comment is a comment. Ultimately, my achievements are a testament to the support of mentors, family, friends, and my faith. Their encouragement has sustained me through both successes and challenges. In closing, I extend my heartfelt thanks to the Youngstown Press Club for this honor. It is a recognition I deeply cherish, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my journey with you. Thank you all.
Come with props. Good evening. I'm Dennis Mangan, and I'm here to tell those of you who never knew Paul C. Jagnow why he's being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and to remind those of you who did know him of the role he played in your growth as a journalist. There is none among you who was not insulted by Paul Jagnow at one time or another, and none who wasn't made a better reporter, writer, photographer, or editor because of him. I should acknowledge that if this were the equivalent of the Oscars Jean Herschel Humanitarian Award, we wouldn't be talking about Paul. A backstory. I bought this pack of cigarettes in 1978 on my third or fourth attempt to quit. And I bought it because I heard on a radio talk show that the way somebody falls off the wagon when they're trying to quit is they bum a cigarette. And you can't bum a cigarette if you've got a cigarette. And so I bought it. I carefully opened it up, put my first son's picture in the back, sealed it back up, and it sat on my desk for some period of time while I worked my way through smoking, or not smoking. About 1981, Paul was city editor, and we worked side by side in a cluster of 3 desks, and one morning he ran out of cigarettes. He turned to me and he said, "Give me a cigarette." I said, "I don't have a cigarette." "I know you've got that pack. Open it up. Give me a cigarette." I got up, ran down the steps, a block up to the Home Savings Building, which had a cigarette and candy counter then in their lobby, bought him a pack of Marlboros, came back in, rushed up the stairs, put the pack on the desk beside him, sat down, and he looked at me and said, "You're an asshole." I see people nodding. And the funny thing, not ha-ha funny, but the funny thing was, that's not the worst thing he ever said to me. Or to Emily, or to Ernie, or to Bob, Deb. We demand much of our heroes and mentors, but sometimes a great teacher is not necessarily a role model. Paul was a great teacher. He taught the trade to a generation of newsmen and news hens. Yeah, well, that was really a phrase back in the day. And we stayed at the Vindicator or went out into the world to toil and to teach the next generation, and his influence reached beyond newspapers. I taught my sons to write using lessons I'd learned from Paul. They're teaching their their children, my grandchildren, and I don't think my family is unique in that. The metaphor about expanding ripples from a stone thrown in the middle of a pond is trite, but that doesn't mean it isn't true. I've talked recently to more than a few Vindicator reporters, and they all remember the sinking feeling when they arrived at their desk and saw a note that said, "See me, PCJ." They knew they were about to learn something, but that didn't mean they were looking forward to it. Many of them, like me, still have memos he wrote, long and short, good and bad. He might call you out on a misplaced comma, the missing middle R in reservoir, or that you used anxious instead of eager. Less commonly, he'd tell you that your lead on a Sunday piece was as good as it gets. In either case, you didn't forget. Paul came to the Vindicator in 1960 by way of the Jambar group. Wah, wah. Now I lost it. where he had been a photographer and editor, and over the next 20 years, he honed his craft at a variety of beats and desks until, as I said, in 1981, he was named city editor. Over the next 25 years, as city editor and then managing editor, his influence could be seen in every major story the Vindicator covered. And what stories they were. The rise and fall of Jim Trafficant, from his bursting on the scene to the Trafficant tapes that had him accepting bribes from mobsters, to the trial in which he beat a U.S. attorney while acting as his own lawyer, although he had a shadow legal team behind him, to a second trial that was his undoing. There was also the fall, literally, if you've seen Vindicator photographs of collapsing blast furnaces, the fall of the steel industry, the decline of downtown Youngstown, including the fall of McKelvey's building and the resurrection of the Voinovich Center, the early days of Youngstown's business incubators, which gave birth to the additive manufacturing and all that means to the city now. There were crooked judges, crooked sheriffs, crooked prosecutors, crooked lawyers, removed from office and some sent to jail. There were mob killings, mob trials, mobsters breaking the vow of omerta. How much corruption was there? Almost 25 years ago to the day, there were 6 Vindicator staff members who won Associated Press Ohio awards for their coverage of 2 things: the corruption of our fine sheriff, Phil Chance, and David Skolnick. David Skolnick won one for his breaking story on Anthony Flask's indictment. The tornadoes of 1985. Paul Jagno said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Front page story every day for 100 days. And then at the end of the 100 days, we'll do a special section. And that's what we did. Every day, 100 days, front page story. And those were readable stories. They were good stories. They told a community that had suffered an immeasurable loss what was happening. There was also a fireworks explosion that killed 9 in Beaver Township, a fire that destroyed childhood memories of 3 generations at Idora and efforts to build blimps, airplanes, and a brewery. But it wasn't just the big stories. There were obits that had to be error-free, although in truth, Ann Preslomsky was probably more of a stickler than Paul was on that. And we wrote every day about fires and government meetings and the police blotter and trials. And in each case, there was always a little voice in the back of your head telling you, check one more fact, ask one more question, because you learned not to earn one of those see me PCJ notes. As I said, he had been a photographer himself, and I think our photographers will attest that he saw to it that they got the equipment that they needed and some gentle guidance. In later years, Paul became interested, obsessed might be a better word, about newspaper design. He started out, my props. He started out modestly. We had then an 8-page or an 8-column front page that sometimes had 20 stories jammed into it, with half of them jumping the inside pages. It was a page that if you had a heck of a lot of time, you might read. But he went from that to a more simple 6-column format for a little while. But Men who are obsessed, or women, do not stop at things like that. By the end, a Vindicator page would look like that. That's Jag now. And still the paper, but that's a different story. Okay, there were First Amendment fights, which Paul led. Attorney Steve Bolton says that even lawyers recognize that the Vindicator spent a disproportionate amount of money on open government fights, especially given its size, the smallest of Ohio's then Big Seven. And Bolton says Paul was not afraid to take on the big fights, citing in particular a suit challenging Trumbull County prosecutor Dennis Watkins' end around on the open records law by declaring that all records in a notorious murder case were not police department records subject to open records. They were the prosecutor's work project. We lost a hard-fought battle in the Ohio Supreme Court, but it had to be fought. He taught reporters to stand up for their rights. Some of you may still have the little wallet tape, little piece of paper for your wallet that he gave you that told you exactly what you were supposed to say when a meeting went off the rails or people were closing meetings or not giving you paperwork. He, Robert McFerrin, and Sarah Cart, he didn't just do newspapers, produced These 100 Years, a Vindicator bestseller that capsulized the 20th century, decade by decade, as seen through the eyes of the Vindicator. To be a teacher of writing, Paul would have to be a student of the language, and he was that, lifelong and seriously. I saw him and editorial writer George Kelly argue over some arcane grammatical point with neither convinced of the other's position. So Paul did the obvious thing. He wrote a letter to William Safire, the New York Times grammar maven, this was before emails, and was delighted when a couple of weeks later, Safire replied and sided with Paul. Paul would have hated this. That's probably not too strong a word. I mean, this is a guy who, somebody told me once at a restaurant when the manager came over to ask how things were, he said, well, I haven't thrown up yet. He didn't have a filter, I'm afraid. But Paul would have hated this, not only because I went longer than 15 column inches, but because he didn't do what he did for honors. He did it because he loved journalism. He loved his job, and he was better at it than anyone I've ever known. And that, as we used to type at the end of a story, is 30. Thank you.
Good evening. I think the picture is going to pop up here shortly. There he is. And we've heard his name intoned already tonight. Thank you, Margie, for what you said, and I think you've seen a lot of the pictures. But first, I just have to say, on behalf of Margie and anybody who worked in the radio news business, I just have to make this official. John, we listened to your 5:30 news every morning, and we stole stuff. And for those who would listen to John on the way home and hear it word for word, it was grand theft, I believe. I'm Jim Michaels. I worked with John for 14 years, so kind of a little window of time that I can kind of try to express what he did that made him work the way he did. The Nagy family is well represented here tonight. I'm so glad so many of you guys could come. And this is humbling because I'm just kind of think of myself as a radio guy, and I guess from John I learned more about news. But well, as Dan Rivers wrote in a letter that he penned, and we've got some other letters as well, Now, we came to KBN, and we're not young, as you can tell. Then John was already a fixture. He was already a news legend at that point in the 80s. Thank you to Pete Milliken for nominating John. So neat, I think, that the newspaper guy nominates the radio guy. Very, very cool. Got letters from Gina Marinelli, Mike Gauntner, Michelle Gatz, Patty Collar, and Dan as well. So again, I just want to kind of explain how he did it, because he had these couple of different personalities, I think. He was just this tenacious news gatherer at the desk, and yet would come across as this very calm and reassuring voice on the air. So how exactly did he do this? Some excerpts from some of the letters from Gina Marinelli's letter. She describes John would sort of half sit, half kneel in his chair while he was typing. I've never seen anything like that before or since. That's true. Continued by Mike Gauntner. Hunting and pecking with 2 fingers, his tongue poking out in concentration. Honestly, he'd sit with his right foot tucked under the desk and his left foot behind him, ready to swiftly tear off the copy and rush into the broadcast booth with the latest scoop. And that's how we worked. And we'd get a picture of this when we were in the old smoky newsroom at WKBN back in the day, where when you ripped stuff off the printer, you walked in the room and there was John in that position you heard described. So how did he make that transition into the newsroom where we heard him as a very calm and reassuring voice? So my observation was every newscast, so we would do news for 5 minutes at the top of the hour, 5 at the bottom. The 5 minutes before each of those, he would go into that booth and look over the script. And it didn't matter if he had seen it several times before, he would look at it again. That 5 minutes was important to him. But of course, 5 minutes in our business these days is an eternity, right? So I'd be in that newsroom and something would come up. Let's just say back in the day, a school delay would turn into a school closing. I had to get it into John. I'd write it up, print it out, burst open that door. First thing I heard, who's in my booth? Somebody's in my booth. He'd gladly take it, of course, and use it. But that was his prep time. And that's what gave us that calm voice and delivery. Hardworking John, I'm sure family members can relay some of this too, 8 to 11 hours a day, sometimes at the desk, early in the morning. In fact, we're, I think, a couple hours into his bedtime where he's here with us. And somebody, I think Margie or somebody mentioned that that he never took a sick day. And then as I recall, I was the fill-in guy, and I never filled in for John because he was sick. He never was. John's motto was, get it on the air, get it right, with no reading errors. He also understood how people listen to the radio too, and that was then as well as now, and that is not very closely. So one thing we never did was, at that time, was school openings, because everybody was just listening for the name of their school. As soon as they heard it, school was closed. So we tried to explain, no, you can't, it's not going to work, only closings. And a story, let's say, that explosion happened, many people injured, et cetera, better repeat where, because people are hearing, well, where did this happen? Let's say Philadelphia, again, not Boardman. I took a lot of comfort in John on September 11th when he was there. Of course, we had national coverage on WKBN, but his voice was part of it. And I got some feel for perhaps how you might hear John out in the real world from Maria Rotuno, who was worked in the publicity promotions department at WKBN back in the day. And we had just moved to South Avenue to the new radio facility. And she said her first day there, she just stood there and watched John work for 5 minutes and was just blown away at what he did. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jen Nagy DePizzo accepting the award for the newest member of the Youngstown Press Club Hall of Fame, Mr. John Nagy.
One of my earliest memories of my dad and the radio was when I was, I think, about 6 years old, and he took me to work with him on a Saturday morning. It was so exciting. We got up in the middle of the night, drove in the dark, following roads to these larger-than-life looming white and red flashing towers behind that building on Sunset Boulevard. The building was dark and basically empty, and we would go down into the basement, into the newsroom, and it had a very distinct smell of ink and electricity. And Dad would get his coffee in his mug that he never actually cleaned because he told me he didn't want anybody to ever borrow his mug. And I would get a hot cocoa. And we'd set off to the tasks of the morning. We'd go to the back room and we'd tear the print sheets from the Associated Press feeds from overnight. And I'd get to run the tapes up the back spiral staircase to the engineer. It was like a secret passage. And Dad would set to creating the morning newscast. Sitting at his typewriter with these two fingers, he would set about to tell the people of the Mahoning Valley what was happening in their world. And for 40 years, he would do just that. The childhood magic of that morning was the same magic that kept him coming in day after day, year after year. My dad loved being the voice of the Mahoning Valley. He was the consummate newsman, verifying every story, chasing every lead, and standing by the validity of every news story that he reported. He treasured the trust that the public placed in him and his news. Over the years, there were several opportunities to leave the Valley and join stations that would take him to larger markets and advance his career. But for my dad, his love of this area and his desire to provide a stable, nurturing home for his children kept him deeply rooted here. So it is an enormous honor to be inducted into the Youngstown Press Club Hall of Fame among so many of the peers alongside whom he spent his life building a career. He would be so humbled and so proud, and so we thank you from the bottom of our hearts as the family of John Nagy.
Good evening. Thanks, Ernie. My name is Bill Lewis, and most of you have probably recognized me from seeing me behind a camera running around the streets of the Mahoning Valley for several decades when I was working as a photojournalist. And that was a cool thing. Last year, 1 year ago to the day, I was standing up here getting one of these awards, and so it's really kind of an interesting thing to come back and be able to introduce the next recipient. And you know, it was a wonderful honor, and I just say thanks to the Press Club for that. And I'll start with a little story about my time working with Tony. Hard as it is to believe, there was a time, only one time that I'll admit, that I really screwed up royally when working for the Vindicator. I can't even recall what the error was, and I think I have subconsciously suppressed that from my memory. But anyway, my head was hanging low, and I knew I really stepped in it badly. And I had to go over to the senior regional editor's desk, and that's that gentleman right there, Tony Paglia, and say, Tony, I screwed up, I made a big mistake. And I was really worried about this. And I figured that him being the boss, he would discreetly handle this error, and it would be okay. Well, he stood up and said, "You screwed it up. You write the correction and get it to me right now." I was like, oh my gosh. But I promptly went back to my desk and did it real quick and got on with it. But that's who Tony was. He was like a very fair editor and a very tough editor, and most of the time he was a pretty calm guy. I can only remember maybe 1 or 2 times seeing him go nuts. But and I think when I think back on our time working together at the paper, he was the guy who kept this team of very eccentric, ego-driven, sometimes crazy journalists all marching in the same direction, pulling on the rope at the same way, which I think must have been like herding cats or something. There were some interesting people we worked with. And while he was doing that, he also really strived to maintain very high standards of journalism in the newsroom. And I think he also kept the community's interest, the interest of the community at large, very much in the forefront. And I think that's one of the things that I remember about him, working with him. Now, something that I was going to mention also, it's been my experience that you can tell a lot about a person by meeting their children. And I think, and as I get older, I see this more and more. And tonight, I had the wonderful opportunity to be seated for dinner with 3 of Tony's grandchildren who are right there. And I just had a wonderful conversation with them, and I thought to myself, these kids have their heads screwed on straight. They're going to be great. And so, Tony, congratulations on a great family too. Congratulations on that. Now, a person can get inducted into the Youngstown Press Club's Hall of Fame for any number of reasons, One of them might be a long career in journalism. Another one might be a career in government affairs or a career in political communications. And Tony touched on all 3 of those things. He managed to reinvent himself a number of times throughout his career, which I respect you a lot for that, and that's really a cool thing. I won't go into great details about his career because it's in the program and stuff, but he started writing at his high school newspaper in Elwood City, PA. Let's hear it for Elwood City, all right. Every once in a while in my time at the paper, I got an assignment in Elwood City, and I always loved going there because I could get lost for the whole day. I'd be gone all day. Well, he started there. He went to college at Duquesne, and he wanted to be a sports writer. He finished up there, and he managed to land an interview at you'll give away your age if you recognize this paper, the Pittsburgh Press. And he was told that he needed to pay his dues and maybe start at a smaller paper. So he did. He went to the Sharon Herald, and he wanted to write sports, but there were no sports jobs open. So he became a beat reporter, and within a year or so, he became the politics writer, which was a pretty cool thing to make that climb up that fast to do it. So he was there for a while, and from there, his career sort of meandered into a different direction, and he ended up in Washington, D.C., doing communications for a Pennsylvania congressman. And that was a pretty interesting thing. I've often thought that would be a very fascinating thing to do. And while he was there, he and his lovely wife, Rhonda, had their first of 3 children, is what I've been told. So that went its way and happened. And he came back to the Vindicator in 1977, and let me paint you a little picture of what the paper was, the Valley was like. I mean, news was very competitive. You had the Tribune and the Vindicator, who were really starting to go head to head. And just in the Vindicator's market, just in Youngstown, you had a couple other publications, small community newspapers, and radio was like really competitive in news. Those radio guys were always out to scoop you on stuff. And Tony thrived in that environment. He loved being in that competitive environment. He loved to be first, but he also loved to get it right. Because I don't think he liked corrections at all. I don't think he liked those. So he managed the newsroom for many years, and I think Dennis, who was up here a few minutes ago, kind of talked about some of the just absolutely crazy, wonderful stuff that the Vindicator did back in that time period. We were the 800-pound gorilla of newspapers around here at that time. But people change courses in their careers and do different things. In 2007, after 30 years, think about 30 years at any job. That's a long time. After 30 years, Tony, another career door opened, and he became Vice President of Government Affairs for the Youngstown-Warren Regional Chamber of Commerce. I don't think I can say that title in one breath again. And continued working there, and he advocated a lot for regional solutions to the area's problems. And I think he did a great job with it, and I think he had a lot of fun while he was there. He retired in 2014 and still lives in the Shenango Valley area, and he's active in a lot of things there. I want to mention that he was nominated for this award by Tim Fitzpatrick. And Tim and Tony worked together, and I also was there at the same time back at the Vindicator when stories were etched into stone tablets and hieroglyphics were used for graphics and stuff, but we had a lot of fun back in those days. But now I would like to present to you all the 2025 Youngstown Press Club Hall of Fame Award to Tony Paglia. Come on up, Tony.
Thank you, Bill. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? Very kind, and we had a great relationship, so I was happy to see he got inducted last year. He was one of the best photographers I've ever seen in my work. Well, being inducted into the Press Club Hall of Fame was never on my radar, so it's a bit surreal to be standing here tonight. I am thankful, I'm proud, and I am appreciative. That's because I love my career in community journalism and public relations, and no one really expects this kind of a pat on the back for trying to do your job. As Bill mentioned, I guess I was meant to be a journalist. I read our little Lincoln, our little Elwood City Ledger from cover to cover when I was a kid. And when I was in high school, they wanted to restart our high school newspaper, and we're looking for volunteers. So, like I said, I was a newspaper junkie, and I was also a current events junkie. So it was really a perfect situation for me. And how little did I know where it was going to take me. I did have quite a career journey, as Bill mentioned, but the meat of my career was at the Vindicator. There were a lot of high points, and I fortunately was in the right place at the right time. Annie Przlomski hired me and a fellow named Dale Peskin to beef up news coverage in Trumbull County to counter plans by the Warren Tribune to start a Sunday paper, which would be in direct competition for us. I never had so much fun in my life. Worked in the Warren Bureau with Dale and people like Tom Petzinger, Chris Long, Vicki Thompson, Bruce Stevens, the Pons, Al Ponzio, and others. Right down the road in Niles were colleagues like Emily Webster and Bill Alcorn. Our marching orders were simple: go crazy and beat the trib. And everybody that's in the business knows there's nothing like competition to bring out the best in everyone. And we had a ball. And I learned a lot about being a better writer, and particularly about being a good enterprise reporter from my first editor, Bill Thomas, and later from Denny Mangan. And that enterprise reporting is really what I tried to emphasize to my staff through the 18 or 19 years I was the regional editor. It's easy to report on what's right in front of you. We needed to go beyond that and get the scoop, get the best story you could. A few years later, Vindy decided to regionalize the news operation, so I was called upon to run the regional desk that covered the 5 counties in our area. At one time, we had 7 bureaus and the city desk and a staff of about 35. We had a succession of great reporters, photographers, and editors. And at that time, I was fortunate because we could hire reporters with experience and the cream of the crop of college graduates, and that made my job so much easier. I was most proud of our regional news operation, and together with the rest of the newspaper staff, we were named the best newspaper in Ohio in 1998. There were several highlights of covering news in the Mahoning Valley, and I think a lot of you know this. For our size, Youngstown generates an enormous amount of news. Journalists from outside the area would comment about how amazed they were at how great of a news town we had. So, nearly every day was a great news day, and nobody got bored. In fact, sometime in the 1990s, I'm sure Denny knows the date, a national survey found that Youngstown was the top media town in the United States. Per capita, our people just loved newspapers, magazines, they loved to watch sports on television, etc. And readers really appreciated us. I can remember people calling the newsroom, pleading with us to do something to get their newspaper delivered on a regular basis. They couldn't get anywhere with their carrier or the circulation department, so they called the newsroom because they loved the paper and they didn't want to drop it. Unfortunately, that was an indication of trouble ahead for our industry. Remember, the saying in those days was the newspaper industry was the only industry that relied on 12-year-olds for its success. I also feel fortunate to have worked in an era when the news industry was held in high standards and generally held in high esteem. We insisted on journalistic standards and ethics, fairness, objectivity, accurate information, etc. And there was no one talking about fake news in those days except maybe people like Jim Trafficant. What's transpired over the last 20 years or so is very sad. Our Vindy and other newspapers across the country have closed or sharply cut back their operations. People don't know or don't care about where to turn for factual news. Many people either rely on social media for their news or biased news programming on the right and left. What's really saddened me is that people really don't know what's going on in their communities anymore. At one time, we had reporters and stringers covering just about every city, village, and large township in our 5-county area. In doing so, we also kept government officials on their toes. We rooted out corruption, ineffective government, and reported on the end of organized crime's hold on the valley. That's why I decided in my retirement, with the help of Tim Fitzpatrick's influence, to get involved with the Youngstown Press Club. The Press Club is devoted to promoting journalism and communications careers in the Valley. We support our working journalists and communications specialists in the area and promote these careers with our high school and college students. And that includes offering the college scholarships. And in light of a growing effort to restrict and nullify our First Amendment rights to freedom of the press, the Press Club is at the forefront in the struggle to protect these important constitutional rights. And I hope you will continue to support the Press Club and bring others to get involved in our group. I want to give a big shout out now to all the people who worked for me and worked with me, reporters, editors, and photographers. Please wave. Thank you. We all should be proud of what we produced for many years at the Vindy. And another shout out to my wife Rhonda and 3 kids, Tony, Kira, and Jessica, for supporting me when Dad wasn't around because of work. Thank you.
One more time, folks. One more time. Good evening. Some of you know me as Deborah Shawless, former Vindicator reporter and entertainment editor. Others may recognize me as Deborah Flora, the executive director of the Mahoning County Land Bank. I am thrilled to join all of you in celebrating the extraordinary career and many accomplishments of my friend Lisa Sully. The world has had many influencers well before the era of social media. Lisa and I were students at Youngstown State and writing for the Jam Bar in the late 1980s when she discovered her influencer, Murphy Brown. The lead character in a TV sitcom about a famous investigative reporter who was tough, quick-witted, blunt, sarcastic, and ethical in her pursuit of truth. The real Lisa shared some interests with the fictitious Murphy, especially in dissecting issues of women's rights, power, corruption, and greed. Still, Lisa was no Murphy Brown. Allow me to explain. It takes confidence to be an investigative reporter. Murphy wasn't the outdoorsy type. Young Lisa grew in confidence and freedom with her older brothers at the family's camp near Cook's Forest. Like her brothers, Gary, Brian, and Brett, she fished, hiked, shot clay pigeons with rifles, and drove ATVs and dirt bikes at speeds that made her father uncomfortable. With confidence came grit. Lisa was a very good softball player at Niles McKinley High School, the home of the Red Dragons. So, who remembers the 1992 movie, A League of Their Own? It's based on the launch of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League during World War II. In one scene, a spectator is heckling the Rockford Peaches, and so the shortstop sends him a message by throwing a ball into his shoulder. 11 years before that movie debuted, Lisa had a league of her own moment. It was a backyard rivalry game. I wasn't there. Kim, I think you were there. Yeah. Lisa was playing second base and fielding a ball that took a bad hop and struck her in the mouth, braces and all. The opposing team's fans took delight in her misfortune. One particular fan, who was leaning on the fence behind first base, would not stop taunting. The first and second base players had a quick conference. When another hit came Lisa's way, she threw to first, her teammate ducked, and the ball landed in the heckler's soft belly. Murphy would have made that the point of the story. What mattered to Lisa was that she took that blow to the mouth, but still finished the play. The runner was safe at first, she admits, but she did her job. She didn't give up. Not in a softball game, not at journalism, not in advocating for seniors' rights when she worked at the Area Agency on Aging. Murphy Brown did not have time nor patience for compassion. The sitcom's running joke was how quickly she burned through secretaries because of their perceived incompetence. Lisa had empathy. As her colleagues in attendance tonight, Sharon, Brian, George, and Joni will attest. While she was the editor of the Jam Bar, and whether her staffers were seeking careers in journalism, advertising, law, or criminal justice, Lisa was their mentor. She shared with them her practical knowledge of producing newspapers and her belief in the power of good journalism. She repeated that cycle at the Tribune-Chronicle, where after many years of reporting, she ascended to an editor's post. Lisa may have been influenced by Murphy Brown, but it's Lisa's own authenticity that elevates her to influencer status. To the working media professionals, and especially the early career reporters in this room, you are seated tonight among many influencers. They have oodles and oodles of experience, and as members of this club, they have your backs. Get to know them, and especially Lisa, whose amazing career will inspire you. I am overjoyed to welcome to the stage my friend, my influencer, and new Youngstown Press Club Hall of Fame inductee, Lisa Solly.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. Thank you to the Youngstown Press Club, its officers, the nominating committee, and my longtime friend and colleague, Deborah Flora, for nominating me. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight, and thank you to my friends and my chosen family for all of your support. It's such an honor standing here tonight. I'm humbled and grateful to be included with such esteemed colleagues. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't started writing and working for the student newspaper, the Jambar. You know, when I was at YSU, I had to get what was called a independent curriculum degree in journalism and communications because they had no degree in journalism. And now they do, and I'm so proud of my alma mater. And I'm proud of what is happening with the press club and the student journalism scholarships and the awards, and I thank the press club for everything that you've done for that. I wouldn't have become the journalist that I had become without the staff that worked with me, and many of them are here tonight. The Jambar made me. It made me the journalist that I have become, and I also want to thank them for everything that they did for me and all of the fun that we had because it was one of the best times of my life. Thank you. I also want to thank my late parents for their support and their love. As you can see from some of the pictures that were up here, I like to experience the story firsthand. Whether it was walking as a prostitute, getting tased by police when they got new stun guns, putting out a fire in a controlled burn with firefighters, snowboarding, or bungee jumping, I've had an incredible career. So let's get back to the prostitute. I went undercover as a prostitute with the police, and the female officer that I was undercover with, you know, I was excited, and I said, what do I get to wear? What do I get to wear? And they said, blue jeans and high-top tennis shoes. It was the early 90s. And I said, okay. And she was wired, and we was a reverse sting, so they were arresting the Johns. And I was next to her, and we were out on the street walking, and they said, now whatever you do, don't get in a car. And I'm like, okay. So we're walking, and a car stopped, and Janice was talking to the individual, and this other car pulls up, and the guy goes, what can I get for $5? And I go, bread or milk at the corner store? And the wire must have picked it up, you know, and they're like, and then he takes off, and the cops are like, what are you doing? And I said, $5. $5, come on. I mean, I know times are tough, but come on, $5. I got a reputation to protect here. But those were just some of the stories that I did. And they arrested a lot of people that night. And the first thing was, are you going to put my name in the paper? And I'm like, yes, I am. But it was a lot of fun. I had a great career. None of that would have been possible, however, if Carl Basic hadn't hired me part-time in the sports department at the Tribune Chronicle. Like many of you in this room, I started at the bottom. I started typing bowling scores. It wasn't easy being in an all-male field in the sports department. Everyone was waiting for me to fail, and I had to be 110% all the time. But then I noticed something. Out in the newsroom, there were a lot of women who I could emulate, and I had the privilege to be in the same newsroom as the great Emily Webster Love. Whose shoulders must be tired from all of the women who have stood on them. She helped guide me both on the copy desk and in news reporting and in feature writing. There were other women like Ellen Kleinerman, the late Marty Dowse, and Hope Steffen, Barb Brucker, and the late Susan Savilic. But Emily carried herself like the champ I wanted to be. I'll never forget me racing out to a robbery in Niles. I was very green. I had just started out in the newsroom, and there was a robbery, and we were right on deadline. And the robbery turned into a shooting, and I ran out to it, and I really didn't know what I was doing, but I knew what I saw, and I was trying to report on it. So I'm dictating the story through a two-way radio back to Emily in the newsroom. And she's typing in the story, and she's pushing that we should get the story in on deadline, and she's pounding her fist on the desk telling them that we needed to get this story in, and I'm dictating the story. And for you young ones in the room, look up two-way radio later on your, search it up. But I'm still searching for that adrenaline. I'm still chasing it from that day, that rush of adrenaline from that time. We got the story in for the 3rd edition, and it was just so exciting. I can't thank you enough, Emily, for being such a badass journalist, a leader, and a lovely lady. Thank you. After a time at the Tribune Chronicle, I went to the Vindicator for a short time as a design editor. I was there for about a year, and then I returned to the Tribune Chronicle to become the police and courts reporter. That is where I fell in love with the 24/7 news cycle and became married to my career. Telling people's story on the most horrific day of their lives takes grace, virtue, and patience. I often rode with the police to understand their perspective better. I learned from the late Christopher Bobby about covering cops and courts. He was a special kind of reporter who had a knack for developing sources. I miss him every day. He taught me to never tell my editor everything I knew, which is why I pressed reporters so much when they came back to the newsroom, because I knew that he taught them that too. I won several awards for writing, from news to features to series to column writing. But I didn't write for awards. I wrote for the readers. When I left the newsroom after 20 years to become the director of communications at the Area Agency on Aging, I really thought my future was behind me. But I found a new passion in advocating for the elderly and the disabled. I was still able to write stories, issue press releases, and conduct interviews. Working with the media gave me a new purpose, and the work was fulfilling. I worked there for about 11 years, and then I went back into journalism for a short time with the Business Journal. Thank you, Andrea Wood, for giving me that opportunity. Because, after all, writing was my passion. I worked there until the pandemic, and then I retired. Now my future is bright with possibilities. I have more time to spend with my beloved boxer, Spencer, who's my child. I can offer my help and support, love, and kindness to others, which I hope to do. For those of you still working in the media, stand for the truth. Don't back down. And for goodness sakes, just because someone tells you something doesn't make it true. Journalism is more important today than ever. As a matter of fact, it's imperative. Not only is our right to free speech under attack, but the right to a free press is under attack. At no time in my life has it been so imperative that we fight for a free press. And the people in this room, I hope that you all take it seriously. I hope that we all advocate for it. And I hope that you all realize that organizations like this are imperative right now. Whatever you do, stand for the truth. Don't back down. Don't be afraid to question authority. If you want better stories, hone your interviewing skills. And no matter what, never let them see you sweat. Thank you very much.
Well, folks, stories. This is what we do. We tell stories, and I hope you've enjoyed all of the stories of our award winners throughout the evening as much as I have. As we conclude this evening, let's take a moment to reflect on what an inspiring night it has been, celebrating exceptional honorees, reconnecting with friends and colleagues, and reminding ourselves of the strength of journalism and communications in our community. Thank you for being part of the Youngstown Press Club Hall of Fame and Awards Dinner. Let's join in for one more round of applause for all of our recipients. We wish you all a safe and pleasant trip home, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. Good night.